first thing I would want to do is just listen to the person play a little bit.
Okay.
Do you have something with you?
I have a lot of things.
Okay. Well, why don't you pick something that you know?
Nervous, but it's good for us.
There's absolutely no need to be nervous for me, Jim. Whatsoever.
That's why you're on the list. Just keep going.
Well, play a little. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I got a great story about that. Go ahead. Something that's not legato? Actually, why don't you keep going? I want to hear you low D.
Okay.
Just.
Something that's not legato. All of his stuff is legato. Let's grab.
I ever work out a Coprash back in the day at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bit of number 3, and don't do those slurs as they're written.
Okay. Just tongue everything.
Tongue everything. Yeah. Don't worry about speed. Whatever's comfortable for you. So I'm not sure which order to go this at. That first piece you played, Barbara Allen. Alternate positions. To me, the whole problem with learning alternate positions was employment and when they made sense. When I'd go to lessons, and I need to move here for a second.
Sure.
And I'd be, I'd play something, and I noticed you did some because you triggered a B flat. And my whole problem was, where are you? It's here. I know it's here. Last one I looked at, naturally. I go out and play in a lesson, and my teacher would say, well, Nick, okay, put that D in 4th. And I'd say, yep, it's in between an E flat and a C, and you're right, I should have.
Yeah.
But but I didn't have any kind of like formula to notice that myself. And one of my teachers, I had a lot of teachers. I had my high school band director was a trombone player, very helpful. I got in the youth symphony when I was a senior. I worked with a man who was teaching, kind of like you did. It was adjunct, and then full time at an extension at University of Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
2 teachers at Wisconsin, and then studied a year abroad between my junior and senior year. Had 3 different teachers there, and then finished with another teacher at New England Conservatory. So was that 8?
Yeah.
Ben Real, Jerry Stitch, Al Chase, then Jean Douay, who played trombone in the Orchestre National de France. He was the solo principal trombone. A guy by the name of Ingemar Roos, who ended up being the principal trombone in Sweden, Gothenburg. Dennis Wick. Went back to Wisconsin, finished my degree, and then was a different trombone teacher. His name was Bill Richardson, and finished at NEC with John Swallow.
Mm-hmm.
When I studied, the 2 most influential of those 8 were Jean Douay and John Swallow. And that's Swallow and that's Douay.
Yeah.
This was at UNH in the fall of '89. Swallow just died a little over a year
I
ago.
remember.
And Douay's still alive. He's retired, living on the Riviera. And that was in summer of '91 at the ITA convention at Eastman. That's the last time I saw him. Both had similar approaches to the instrument, slide work, etc. Douay was very regimented in his approach to playing. Our master classes, it was set up as a place called the Institute for Advanced Musical Studies, which no longer exists. And they would bring in artists from throughout Europe, sometimes from the United States, mostly from throughout Europe. So Douay came and worked with us for a couple of weeks. We would do master class. He was responsible for doing a 2-hour master class every day. We did like all day long. Mm-hmm. We went from 9 until lunch and from 2 until dinner every day. Not a lot of practicing. Everything was done there. But the first thing we started, and like morning was technique and exercises, afternoon was solo literature. And we would observe each other. And in the morning we would go through all major and harmonic minor scales, 24. We do C major, A minor, F major, D minor, go through flats, then G major, E minor, blah, 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 blah. And with each scale, there were specific alternate positions that he would ask for, that we had to play. If we didn't do the alternates correctly, we had to do it over again. They had to do with connecting half steps. So on a major scale, you always were able to glissando mi to fa and ti to do.
To actually not
So it for instance, if you had a G flat in the key signature, if you're in D flat major, it was with the S in 6th and 4th. And his position was then when you play in those keys, or for instance, E flat, you always played the scale pattern with the D in 4th, B flat, D in 4th. G flat major meant that B flat, C flat was right. So there are like no notes in first position. So Absolutely identical, except you're just down one position. It's nice with food.
Yeah. But
And then, I'm sorry, and then you can ask a question. So when we're then, when basically when I'm in those keys, those are my primary positions. So if I'm in E flat major, I'm looking for a D in fourth. If I'm in D flat major, I'm looking for my Fs in fourth and my F in sixth. That doesn't mean I always use them that way, but my F in first is my alternate position. It's not alternate. And this is basically those patterns. And on the flip side are the harmonic minors. And harmonic minor, I think, is useful as opposed to the other two simply because it's the most removed from major. Of course, natural minor is just major from la to la. And melodic minor, on the way up, if you think of
only one step different from the major.
From the parallel major,
Right.
That's right. You play B flat major and play D flat, and you got yourself ascending. So this is the most removed, and so that's what he made us do. And then all these things, all the alternates are based on half steps. I'm more inclined to use alternate positions on half steps than I am simply because you can play it in the same position.
Okay, now you said the half steps could be glissando, but you didn't practice
so
it that
you
way.
could theoretically,
right. That was the question.
So they are on the same partial is the point.
Okay.
That is the
All
point.
right.
And so what I tell my students is you should be able to glissando your half steps. If you cannot smear it, you are in the wrong pattern. Okay. And thus that gives you some ideas. Now, the other thing that I use a lot is B flat in fifth on E flat arpeggio. And the reason I do that, Jim, came from David Concertino.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I haven't played that piece now in over 30 years, but I did a lot of it, and I've done it with orchestra 4 times. And that opening statement. I had a hard time getting on a 16th and getting that clean.
Right.
And so I started working on it. And that became a habit. So up and down E flat arpeggio. So you take Barbara Allen here. There's I would do that. I would play that at first like you did. But now with the arpeggio coming up, that to me flows nicely in fifth. And see, that D to me screams fourth position.
Right.
Because otherwise, see and then Swallow was very much the same way, but he'd talk about it differently. He would say half positions give you a pop. Now I can hide that.
Yeah.
Right? But you got that inherent, and you hear it more on a half step than you hear it on a whole step. Or at least it's not as objectionable, if you want to use that word. Again, this it's certainly a subjective call. But the other thing was is the higher you go, he was a big proponent. Swallow was a big proponent of G in fourth if you were slurring. He said, if you're slurring from G to A flat,
And
you're going to get that A flat every time if you got the G in fourth.
Right. Because
getting
the pop.
G.
Yeah, they're the pop is
More
to your
pronounced.
advantage, and it's to your advantage.
Well, See, the thing is, occasionally I'll miss that A flat crossing the partial. So I'm eliminating that. Now, Swallow is a big alternate position guy. And the other thing that always impressed me about both of them was their extraordinarily fluid slide technique. I mean, they just look beautiful and effortless. Swallow, especially Dewey. Well, both really, but I saw Dewey play more than Swallow. It was just beautiful. It's relaxed. It looked like the easiest thing in the world, and a lot of that was due to his use of alternates. Now, so this is my first tune tonight. So that third phrase, I'm starting the A in 6th, going out to 7th.
Okay.
Because I want a good tone, I'm also using very small equipment, and hopefully I will last. So I'm playing a 5C. This is a medium board.
Wow.
Yeah. Then I go.
All of them so far out. Yeah.
Because I want to be able, so you know, brighter, especially with a small horn. Now, with what you have, there's going to be less difference, but there's a noticeable difference in tone color at that volume.
Yeah.
Warmer. Exactly right. And when I first started using it on a regular basis, we're in the scale patterns. I make my students learn these specific patterns.
That's a good idea. I will steal.
And then, when they're in those keys, I'm looking for the implementation thereof.
So when they learn the E flat scale,
D
is in 4th.
That is your primary position.
And then
D in 1st is the alternate position.
Right. Got it.
So, so they're doing something like this. All right. That D is in 1st, but that D is in 4th. Right? Because you got B flat. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is a great exercise, not only but for lowering your F partials. So, for instance, I start here. I'll be out here so you can see what I'm doing with my line. Then I might do. But I'm expecting them to be putting the D's where appropriate in 4th.
And you alternate it, I think, as you went.
Correct. It depends on, for instance, if I play this F in 1st, to me this is a 1st position. I mean, you could do that. You could also do. You could just stay out in 4th. A flat major, my scale pattern is. Had to learn that. That's actually not as hard as you think. All you're doing is take B flat major. You're just going down it's the same ending as B flat major and A major. That's how I got used to that G in 4th.
And this is great because we always just learn scales because somebody told you to.
Yeah. So it gave me a formula. It gave me a rationale and an approach to be looking for alternate position. That's how I learned how to use them. That's how I stopped going to my lesson where my teacher would say, Could you have done that D in fourth? And I'd look at it and think, yeah, you're absolutely right, I should have. But I didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
This gave me a way to see it. So that's my alternate position thought.
Excellent.
Talk a little bit about fundamentals.
Good.
Actually, before we leave that, legato tongue. What do you have a consonant that you think of?
Do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can. Again, I did for many years. Again, Swallow, one of my first lessons, said to me, "You know, Nick, I can hear every time you're using your tongue. I can hear your tongue." And he truly did have the most beautiful legato I've ever heard. He was a big natural slur guy, and his consonant suggestion was L, la, which is but just go da 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 da, B flat. So again, you can hear a little bit of that. You can hear the tongue being used. You can kind of. What it requires is an extraordinary, quick, precise slide motion.
As fast as possible.
Because the tongue is so light that if you don't move at the precise moment,
mm-hmm.
you're going to hear some smearing, as you just probably did.
But you're just saying la 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 la.
Yeah,
la, la, la.
I'm curling my tongue almost to the very tip of the roof of my mouth.
Yeah.
It is way, way far away from where the teeth meet the gum, which is generally where I articulate otherwise. If I do it right, you shouldn't be hearing any tongue sound at all.
That's hard to change.
You can hear a little kind of sound. So if you do, for instance, like Remington, that first whole note thing. It takes some getting used to. So yeah, I can hear it on the way up more than on the way down.
Yeah.
And you wait till the last second possible to move the slide. Just wait. And then I hold rather loosely. Are you two up, two down?
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm very loose with this. I kind of throw it and catch it. But if I do it right, you shouldn't hear any tongue sound at all.
I think what I'm so afraid of is the glissando.
Right.
You know, that I'm stopping the air a little bit.
Yeah,
too.
maybe. And you know, I remember talking to a couple of my colleagues, grad student, one in particular, is very fine player. It was after my first lesson with Swell, talking about the law legato. Man, I don't know. He said, I'd buy into it, Nick. he said, I think it's worth it. I think it really works. So again, to me, now if I do sort of a do, you can kind of hear it. Now I'll try to do the same thing. So I like that sound better. It takes a very precise motion of the slide. It helps to have a good working slide. And then, like I say, I'm rather I'm rather loose with how I hold it, and I really where I have the slide is there.
I was taught this way from beginning days.
Yeah.
And then I switched to here because of some guys out west that talked about pivoting and everything. But that tossing is a thing that, boy, that's scary.
Well,
accuracy is, but it goes back if you spend time here.
Yeah, but you know what Swallow would say to me? Swallow said, Nick, you don't tune with your fucking arm. You tune with your fucking ears.
Oh, that is absolutely true. You probably can't teach that way anymore, but we should have learned a lot more back then.
Yeah. So anyway,
can I try the la?
Sure.
The L sound.
It's smoother.
Yeah.
You can still hear it a little bit, but it like I said, it takes some getting used to. And the first thing that happened to me was all of a sudden I started hearing all of this slide, smeary motion between, because my heavier tongue had been covering up my inability to move properly and precisely from position to position quickly enough. And the heavier tongue covered that up. And so the first thing that happens, and I'll tell students when they start working on this, is you're going to have to live with the slide issues. You're going to hear more problems with the motion of the slide than but you have to stay on the discipline, and usually, almost always, the problem is people move too soon and too slowly. You gotta wait till the last second. Da da. The motion is the tongue. Da 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 da.
And so
you just wait till the last second.
Right.
And ta da. I don't know exactly what the consonant is. All I know that what gets rid of the sound is the distance back from the teeth. And it's just as light as I can touch the roof of my mouth with the tip of my tongue.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that tremendously already.
All right.
Give me something to do all week.
So those are my first two things I wrote.
Okay.
Now, slurring up. Here, there's a simple physical thing that makes that work. And this is the way. Okay, so you're now my student.
Absolutely.
Right. If you take this D or this G, or any lower note. Say this F and this F, and you play them at the same volume. Which one takes more abdominal strength? The lower or the higher?
The higher one?
Sure, absolutely correct.
Right.
Why is that?
Because the air needs to move quicker in this.
So if you're going through more air, you can play the lower. If the lower note takes, this is always the answer too. If the lower note takes less air, you can hold out a lower note longer than a higher note at the same volume. You can hold out a low B flat longer than you can hold out a high B flat.
Oh no!
Of course not. So it's not more air.
Yeah.
So
is it the speed of air though, or the amount of air?
What happens to the embouchure when you're playing in the upper range? What are the muscles? They are more.
They're tighter.
They're more firm.
Right.
Therefore, they offer more
resistance.
And you got to push a little harder.
Ah. Okay.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I take this low F, the middle one, and play at a softer and a louder volume, now you can answer the right way. Which one is the abdominal wall more firm for? The louder or the softer?
For the louder.
The louder, because you're going through more air. You can't play a loud note as long as you can play a soft note. At some point, you can equalize the effort from the lower note and the higher note if the lower note is somewhat louder than the higher. And if you do it right, the higher note tends to just drop right out.
Huh.
So rather than trying to gather up the strength for the high G on the high G, or the flats there, I guess, if you lean on the D slightly and just relax, that G flat should just drop right out. It's a simple fact of physics.
It's exactly the opposite of what I've been doing for however long.
Right.
The higher the note, the more air you need set for it.
So when it sounded to me, okay, so set support up for slurring up. This G sounded difficult. If you do it right, actually try CF. And relax on the F. If you do it right, that F should feel it relatively effortless. Try D flat, G flat.
It's like jumping off out of an airplane. You're not sure it's going to work.
Yeah, you got to buy into it. Yeah, play the C a little louder, Jim. There you go.
Oh yeah.
No, be precise and quick with your motion with the slide. That's the idea. Or do this. There you go. Now bring it up a position. Do D flat, G flat. Good. So the important note in this, to me, here's the note that's important in the phrase. Da da dee da dee da dee da da dee da da dee da dee da. And I would lighten up on the G flat even more than that instinctively. See, I see that D, that F fourth. But notice my check the volume. That's how loud I'm playing that D flat. And then it's
it probably doesn't sound much different right now because I haven't had to work, but it feels much different.
Mm-hmm. you go. So for instance, this guy. I'm going to give it a little bit on the E in the first phrase for the A flat. Just relax a little. I just relax a little on the A. But I don't try to push. Right? You get that pop. Now the important note coming up is that low G. And it's just simple physics. What I'm doing is equalizing, trying to equalize the effort for the two notes. If you get if you do it right, it's a trick. It's not like I can do it and somebody else can't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is just it's a law of physics that should work.
So basically they feel the same. They
Correct.
sound the same.
All I'm trying to do is relax a little on the volume on the higher note. The wider the volume, the more distance between but the wider the interval, the more distance in volume. So this guy gives me the most. I'm going to lean into the eighth notes.
Yeah, I can't wait to try this.
That's an elegant approach to the high range.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful sound.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds effortless because it is. If you do it right, the top note should just drop out, absolutely drop out. Okay. The thing is now. The other thing is that as you. That's a bad picture in the brain because that means the airstream is going to be holding back. There may be a lift on the air and you may just stop blowing and nothing comes out. If nothing comes out, then you got a problem with just consistent regular support, which I can talk about in a minute.
So that's
this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like doing this when I'm conducting either. Because that suggests a holding back on the airstream. The airstream has to continue moving forward. Okay, but there's a way of doing that. I'll get to that. Anyway, so lower note, higher note, balance.
Mm-hmm.
If you get the balance right, that top note should just drop out. There was an exercise Dewey used to do. It just floored me. Oh shit! I took it home. But it was an octave exercise. Boop, boop, boop. He was like, I don't know if I remember. The first time I heard that, I about shit my pants.
I'm doing the best I can right now myself.
Again, it's just a matter of leaning on the lower note. Or getting back to here. That G in fourth that I showed you before. The key to this is that low G. That's how I'm doing that.
Huh.
And again, keep in mind, this is years and years and years and years of working on that.
Right.
So my it's like the alternates. I can see that, and I have a pretty good idea of what it takes to be able to do the interval I need. You know, so. But it works great. The problem is hearing soon. You know,
Right.
Right?
Well,
Bass backwards.
it's been taught that way.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that's that to me is ass backwards. And again, if I do it right, that wasn't very good. Works on most any interval, assuming I have the chops.
Mm-hmm. And backing.
Right. There are two other aspects of support or of sound production, and that's really what I want to finish with. Okay. So I noticed you played a trigger B flat. That was a really good place to do it too. Very logical. All right.
This design now makes those so much easier.
Yeah.
I used to stay away from them because it was so
I
hard
once
to
asked
make them
Swallow.
down.
Swallow had one of those on there when we did this concert.
Yeah.
He's got a theater valve. They're expensive though.
Yeah.
So I said he didn't have one when I was studying with him. I was in graduate school 76 to 78. This is 89. So I said I see you got a theater valve on there. I said, is it worth it? It was great. The answer is, well, it's better. But that's not what you asked. Is it? It's a great line. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It really does make the switch different and easier. I'm an old dog, as you can see. All right. Now, tone wiggles a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
No question about it. That's
Yeah.
something I've noticed.
Yeah, and I get that when I fatigue. There's the second piece I'm playing tonight is a sacred vocal work. It doesn't sound hard, but it is really really hard for endurance. It's like playing a Rochou. To me, Rochous it's much more difficult in terms of endurance than, say, a page of Colproche.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm really hurting more by the end of it. Sostenuto playing is the hardest thing to do in terms of endurance. And no matter what I do, I'm probably going to wiggle a little bit on some of my notes. Middle C in particular on this one. For some reason, this note, when I'm fatigued, you'll probably hear it. It's funny because the piece ends. For some reason, I can always control that F, and I can't control the C, and I still haven't solved that one. But I really haven't. But all right, so I think trying to explain sound production is probably the hardest thing about teaching the horn, without question. You know, how do I make my high B flat work every time? Right?
Yeah.
You know, I really think that is the hardest thing to teach. And there are two aspects. Do you do any mouthpiece buzzing at all?
Yes.
All right. What do you do when you mouthpiece buzz? I'm just curious. Can you show me?
Make sure I'm in the ballpark pitch. I do a little resistance with my hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll do the tune.
Right.
Yeah. Stigler does that. He thinks that really helps center in the note. He likes that a lot. I don't do that as much. But I start every day with just my mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And what I do is pick a medium high note. Medium high,
Yeah.
but above B flat. And I glissando up and down as far as I can with reasonable comfort. And if I wait a second, I can probably connect up higher a little bit more evenly. not trying to blow hard. I'm kind of just taking what gives me. I'm a little disturbed by that little barrier. I can do better than that. Sometimes if I just wait, I always do it better by myself.
Oh, yeah.
Always. Now that was noticeably, you could hear there's a little purer tone and there was a little less of a barrier. I'm going to try one more time. And then as I go down low, a little bit of resistance always helps a little.
This is the very first thing you'd be doing.
This is the very first thing I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I didn't find that to be hard. I don't think I don't feel like, it's more of a coordination, a balance of muscles. Okay, so that I found that I could go up into the upper register on my mouthpiece like way easier than on my horn, like way easier, and I didn't understand why that was. That befuddled me, and that was, I started doing this when I was a sophomore in college, like 19, 20 years old, and I figured, and there was another thing that Swallow once told me in terms of warm-up. He asked me what I was doing, and I said, well, Remington, I do the long tones, and I do some low lip slurs, and he goes, you're taking way too much time in the low range.
Huh.
He said, I think a healthy embouchure should start in the middle and work to the extremes evenly. I thought that was controversial. Yeah. Not too many people say that.
Well, that's, I was always told, in fact, right now, pick a lower note and buzz down and then make arcs off of it and gradually work yourself.
Generally speaking, by myself, first thing fresh in the morning, I'm good to a double B flat and back down. Just right off the top. And I'm not going to answer that. Isn't that what I was just doing?
I don't know, that's the phone too.
Yeah, wee. That was a double A. So I thought, shit, I can do that. So. That took me a long time. Okay, so let me break that down a little bit. Embouchure and air support. There are to me there are the trick always. Now see, again, good day, bad day. Good day, bad day. By the time I was like 20 years old, I could play bolero. I could play high F. Every once in a while. And really play bolero. And I thought, and then it would go away. Good day, bad day. There are days where I didn't have to think twice about playing a high B flat. Then there are days where I had no idea how to play high B flat. And I kept thinking, okay, it can't be physical. I got the same chops, I got the same lips, I got the same horn, got the same mouthpiece. One day it works, one day it doesn't. It's got to be mental. Got to be.
Yeah.
So what is it that I'm doing or that I'm thinking about when I'm having a good day that I'm not when I'm having a less fortunate day? And this took me a long time to solve, and I didn't have. This is my idea. I really didn't have much guidance that way. Most of my problem had to do with support, but some with embouchure. Now, to me, if I find the right focal point, this is my approach to sound production. And one of the first things I do with my students is say, hold your hand out like this for me. So you do that. Now, I'm going to put my hand on top of you. I'm going to slowly increase pressure downward. I want you to hold your hand in the same place while I do it. Don't let it move. And then I draw attention to how much more firm your muscles are right now than they were before. And then as I relax a little bit, I can just take my hand away. This is always a little bit trickier. It's not so bad. Now, how did you do that? What are you're aware of these muscles being tense, but are you actually mentally saying, okay, I'm going to tighten my bicep muscle by 8? You're just holding your hand in the same place. What you're working, you can understand. What you're doing is you're concentrating on what you're doing that's the same. And the things that change do so automatically. All right. Now, when I'm doing this, so I produce a note. And to me, it doesn't matter what pitch you produce, Jim. Just do a note, and I'm going to talk while you're doing it. Now, to me, it feels like my lips inside the mouthpiece are right on top of each other. And the part of the lip that's vibrating, keep doing it. So the lips are right on top of each other. Part of the lip that's vibrating is right in the middle of the mouthpiece. Right? Okay. So now, as I ascend and descend, I don't go up and down inside the mouthpiece. I keep my lips exactly in the same place, and I focus on that and that alone. So they don't move.
Yeah.
So when I do an octave, if the part of what I'm thinking about with my embouchure is not what changes here, but I'm setting up the balance correctly, and I'm keeping my lips centered in the middle of the mouthpiece. So there's no motion. So embouchure-wise, if I do now, I'm profoundly aware of things changing. Just like you're aware of these muscles becoming more tense. But it's not what I'm focusing on.
You're focusing on
what I'm focusing on is keeping my lips in the middle of the mouthpiece. And not, do you ever feel like you're going up to a high note and you go, you know, if I stop and readjust my embouchure, I can play this note.
Right, yeah, exactly. But that adjustment is bad.
That's right. That is symptomatic of the feeling of the lips being at the top end of the mouthpiece. Like, to exaggerate. And there's only so far. Now, what I think actually happens is what causes that feeling is the bottom lip curls in underneath.
Yeah, roll.
Sort of when driving what seems to be driving the embouchure to the top part of the mouthpiece. But I don't think about the bottom lip curling or not letting it curl or any of that. All I'm trying to do is keep it centered. And So lip slurs. You do lip slurs?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, again, the first one I do, because of what John told me, going to the extreme ranges equally. The first one I do after that glissando thing I just did, the chromatic scale, is I do that, and I'm focusing on and I do a lot of. I don't do a lot of. I do only a couple of. And I wait on those. I do up and downs, just straight up and down. You may want to start with, and students I'll say do like. Okay, now, so that's embouchure. Support. Mystical word. People, you got to support with your diaphragm. Yeah, that's true. You got you got to use your air right. You're not using your air right. You got to support more. Okay, how do I do that? Just, All right, so part of this solution for me came from the fact that, so I played bass trombone tonight. Mm-hmm. So, and there's a distinctly different feel to all of the horns. That's 88H5G. This is a VMI, Vogtland Musikalische Instrument. It's Eastern German, cheap. I bought this for like $1,200. I wanted an inline double rotor, cheap. I got this, 2G. It's a nice one. It has a nice tone. So. Nice one. For what I need, nice one.
Yeah.
Now, again, why could I mouthpiece buzz into the upper range and not do it on the horn? I was asking myself that question for a long time. And actually, so I started doing the chromatic scale simply because I thought if I could go up to the upper range with just the mouthpiece, what can I do on the horn that would simulate the same thing? And that obviously is a very slippery chromatic scale. And I first started doing this when I was teaching here, and I would go up and down to a high B flat. And I found I could do that with the same reasonable ease. And within a really short period of time, I could do the chromatic scale up to a high D and down. But it stayed there for a few years. Then I found after like 3-4 years, I could go up to my high F like that every day. It took me about a decade to be able to do that on a B flat. Okay. And I still wasn't sure why, but it started dawning on me. And I knew it had something to do with making the bell respond. And I can remember sitting in here with a lesson with my euphonium student. I remember the student. His name was Kevin McDonald. And I suggested something about the bell. And I remember him coming into his lesson the following week, and he said to me, Nick, it really is all about the bell. And making that part, So here's the deal. I think this is, this is just trial and error and observation. Here's another thing I do with my students. If I just take a deep breath and relax, not push the air, but take up and relax to sort of like lung neutral, where the muscles are relaxed. So I just go, right? It takes not very long. If I do the same thing through the mouthpiece, without trying to push the air through the mouthpiece, but just relax. Takes noticeably longer. Why?
Resistance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's going through the little hole.
Right.
No brainer. Do that through the horn, and this. becomes this. Like, more than twice as long.
Right.
That much more resistance. Somehow, we need to negate the resistance of the instrument. We need to take into account that resistance. And it's different from horn to horn to horn. And actually, by making these switches, so, all right. How do I do that? Right? I mean, because nowhere near as much resistance.
Yeah, it just goes away.
Yeah, and for a long time, you could probably do that. But how do you do that? That's right.
Always a question.
Okay, so let's take this B flat. Play that note into your horn, and I'm going to talk while you're doing it. Okay? There's a motion of air that's making your bell vibrate in response. Right? You can kind of feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The resonance of the whole horn.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So play the note again. I'm going to stop you and start. Now make the bell respond. Now make the bell respond. Now play this E flat. Make the bell respond. Good. Now play your low G. Make the bell respond. So that to me is how one negates the resistance of the instrument. And again, so or now actually on the way down I lost the center of my embouchure. So if you will, holding the lips in the same place is like holding your hand in the same place. Making the instrument, keeping the bell vibrant and full those are like my two hands. I have two focal points that do not change. So there's a noticeable change in resistance. Between a pedal note and a trigger note, even with the Thayer valve.
Right.
Noticeable change. So how does one make that smooth? Simple. You go past all of this. If I can keep the bell vibrant and responsive, all the while keeping my embouchure in the middle of the mouthpiece, I'm automatically compensating and taking into account without really knowing how I'm doing that. It's like, how did you know how tight to make your arm muscles? You just held your hand in the same place. I know that sounds really simple.
Well,
but it seems to me that by focusing on what it is that one does that's the same. Okay, so for the wiggles, it sounds to me, may I suggest that if you're like me, you're thinking a little too much about what's going on here and the air going into the horn. And you're trying to control the air going into the horn. That's the wrong place. That's the wrong focal point. You're not, my thinking is, one is not taking into account the resistance of the instrument. You're too focused on what's going on here. That's why it was harder for me to get the trombone to respond than the mouthpiece. because there's very low relative resistance, and everything is right here. So I want to come in on a high B flat. I take a breath, center my embouchure, set the tongue. I release the tongue and make the bell vibrate. Work initially. But again, set your embouchure, but then take your focus to the big end of the instrument. Most of my trigger response was I kept thinking I gotta change. So bad word, different. I gotta do something different to create the next note. Bad word. For me, bad word. It's always the same. So that took me a long time. The other thing I do regularly, I do a lot of lip slurs. I do my mouthpiece work, I do the glissandi, and then I do 18 lip slurs every day. A lot of them are just two note guys. I'm very proud of that one. That took me a long time. Years. Years. But this guy, I go up and down 3 times. Then the next one I do is and then I do then I also do I repeat 6th and 7th position, and I do E flat, D, D flat, C. I never play those notes. What I'm doing is getting a feel for the resistance. But again, I center the embouchure, and then my focus really is 2 things. I'm keeping the while keeping my embouchure in the middle of the mouthpiece. I'm really, when I'm doing my warm-up, I can't tell you how concentrated I am on doing that. On both of those aspects, without just really intensely focusing. My problem is more correct air support and thinking about the big end of them and not becoming overly preoccupied with my embouchure. And I have to make the instrument respond. That is my most common problem. And I can recognize it faster than I used to.
Now, I agree with everything you're saying, and I can't wait to try it. There is one question I have.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm trying to keep this, and this is where I get into trouble.
Yeah.
Trying to keep this constant, which I have tried on the old Remington thing. He would say, okay, give us the lip slurs with as little change as possible. I think that's probably the same thing. I get to a point where it feels like I can't go any higher. and it's not that damn high.
Right. Right. But you feel like you're hitting a barrier.
Right. And it feels like, what am I going to do?
Sometimes, so the one thing I have observed is that, and that was the one thing, I don't know if I can do this now or not, but when I initially started doing mouthpiece work, I was good up to like a D flat D. And it would stop. I can still do that. Now, I can get over that. I need to stop playing pretty soon.
Okay.
But I can get over that. And it has to do with, although I don't think about this as much, I found it helped. It has to do with drawing the corners. Okay, so the part of the lip that's vibrating is between my fingers. All right? So if you think of like geometry, x-axis, if you think of squeezing this way rather than squeezing the lips together this way, but increasing the muscular tension in a horizontal fashion. That's how I got over that. I might be able to do better with a bigger mouthpiece. Wrong.
Right. That's what I get.
And the difference is I wasn't, you have to think initially, right away, not just at that point, but from the get-go.
And keeping this in.
And squeezing the corners in toward the mouthpiece, in toward the center. And to me, it sounds that you're starting too low. I would start medium high. Right, and then resist the urge to blow harder. Try. I think. I'm just trying to get that buzzy little, effortless, buzzy little kind of mosquito. Does that feel hard?
No, it doesn't.
And I bet you could do that first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So, why should it be hard when you put it in the horn?
Your brain.
You know, see that I would always ask myself, why can I go up into the upper range like that? So
I like the bell vibrate.
Yeah.
Somebody once told me to make the wall vibrate or something far away, which might do the same thing.
Excuse me. So that's kind of what we've just been talking about.
Great. Huh. Well, is there anything, if you had one, I'm asking everybody this, if you had one thing to tell the rest of the trombone world, and you had to do it in 1 or 2 sentences.
Words I don't like. I don't like the word different. I think anytime I focus on doing something different in terms of producing a note from a previous note, that leads to problems. The word blow. I don't like the word blow. You don't blow harder to play louder. Playing a brass instrument to me is just like singing. I don't blow harder to sing louder. You vibrate loudly. You make the bell vibrate loudly. You don't blow harder. Symptomatic of blowing harder in the low range is sounds. I make the bell vibrate louder. It's just like going, ah. If I want to sing more loudly, and I go, ah, doesn't work.
Yeah.
You vibrate louder. ah, somehow one makes the instrument vibrate. To think about blowing, and again, to me, that's like forcing air into the horn. You are not properly supporting the instrument. Pointed attack. Firmer attack. I like that. To me, the tongue needs to be wide enough side to side to start a wide enough air column to make the instrument vibrate. If you say pointed attack, sometimes I think people think of their tongue looking like that.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, and you spray the attack. The tongue needs to be actually a little bit more like that to start the air column right. So if I'm talking about an attack, I like front loaded, firmer beginning to the note. I think that puts a better picture in a brain.
Great.
So words I like to avoid: different, blow, and pointed attack.
That's all really great, and I'm going to have a hard time editing out things, because everything that's in
Whatever
there
you like,
is
Jim.
working so well.
It really doesn't. If you want to edit out the X-rated part.